The bullet tore through Victoria Lawson's spine on a Tuesday afternoon in June 1884, and the world she knew ended before her body even hit the dusty ground of Tonopah Junction, Nevada. She had been riding hard across the desert, racing her older brother Samuel back to their family's ranch after delivering supplies to the mining camps east of town. The horse stumbled on loose rock, threw her sideways, and she landed badly against a jagged outcropping. The snap was audible, Samuel would tell her later, though she remembered nothing but the sky suddenly filling her vision and then darkness swallowing everything whole. When she woke 3 days later in Doc Pemberton's cramped office above the general store, the old physician's face told her everything before his words could. "Miss Lawson, I need you to listen carefully," Doc Pemberton said, his weathered hands folded on his lap as he sat beside her narrow bed. "Your spine was severely damaged in the fall. I have done everything within my power, but the injury is beyond repair. You will never walk again." Victoria stared at the water-stained ceiling above her, those words echoing in her mind like thunder rolling across empty plains. Never walk again. She was 20 years old, strong as any ranch hand, capable of breaking horses and mending fences and riding from dawn until dusk. She had planned to help her father expand their cattle operation, to maybe one day run her own ranch. Now she could not even feel her legs beneath the thin cotton sheet. "There must be something," her mother whispered from the corner, voice breaking. "Some treatment, some doctor in San Francisco or back east." Doc Pemberton shook his head slowly. "I am sorry, Martha, truly sorry. The damage is permanent. The best we can do now is help Victoria adjust to her new circumstances." Her new circumstances. The words felt like a prison sentence. The weeks that followed were darker than any Victoria had known. Her father carried her from the doctor's office to their ranch house, his arms trembling not from her weight but from helplessness. Her mother cried when she thought Victoria could not hear. Samuel stopped meeting her eyes altogether, as if looking at her now caused him physical pain. And Victoria herself cycled through rage and despair, and a hollow numbness that felt worse than both. She could not bathe herself, could not dress herself, could not even sit upright without support. Her father fashioned a wooden chair with armrests, but it was heavy and immobile, trapping her wherever someone placed it. She spent her days staring out the window at the life she could no longer live, watching ranch hands work horses she would never ride, seeing the desert stretch endlessly toward horizons she would never reach. It was during one of these long, bitter afternoons that Nathan Walker first laid eyes on her. Nathan had drifted into Tonopah Junction 3 months earlier, a lean cowboy with sun-darkened skin and hands calloused from years of hard work. He was 24, quiet-spoken, and skilled with horses in a way that made the Lawson Ranch foreman hire him on the spot. He kept to himself mostly, sleeping in the bunkhouse with the other ranch hands, doing his work without complaint, and spending his evenings whittling wood by lamplight. The other men talked, though, and Nathan heard them mention the boss's daughter who had been injured, who never left the house anymore, who had been so full of life before and now was just a ghost behind lace curtains. He had glimpsed her once through that window, a young woman with dark hair and a profile that seemed carved from sadness, and something in his chest had tightened with recognition. He knew that kind of loss. He had worn it himself after his own family died of fever when he was 17, leaving him alone in a world that suddenly made no sense. The idea came to him slowly, taking shape over long evenings as wood curled away from his knife blade. He had seen a wheeled chair once, years ago in Denver, being pushed along a boardwalk by a man whose legs had been crushed in a mining accident. The contraption had been crude but functional, giving its occupant mobility where before there had been none. Nathan was good with his hands, patient with details, and he found himself sketching designs on scraps of paper, measuring lumber in his mind, wondering if he could build something better. He approached Mr. Lawson one morning before dawn, hat in hand, words carefully chosen. "Sir, I have been thinking about your daughter's situation," Nathan began, watching the older man's face carefully. "I would like to build her a chair with wheels, something she could move herself. I have seen such things before, and I believe I could make one that would work." Jonathan Lawson studied the young cowboy for a long moment, surprise and suspicion and desperate hope warring across his features. "What would you want in return?" "Nothing, sir. Just permission to try and access to your workshop and some materials." "Why would you do this for someone you do not even know?" Nathan met his gaze steadily. "Because I know what it is to lose everything and feel helpless. If I can give her back even a small piece of what was taken, that seems worth doing." Jonathan's throat worked, and he nodded once, sharp and quick. "You have my permission. Whatever you need from the workshop is yours." Nathan worked on the chair every evening after his ranch duties ended, and every spare moment he could find on Sundays. He started with a sturdy wooden frame, measuring and cutting each piece with meticulous care. The seat needed to be comfortable but supportive, wide enough for stability but narrow enough to fit through doorways. The wheels were the greatest challenge. He rode into town and convinced the blacksmith to forge him 2 large iron-rimmed wheels and 2 smaller ones for the front, trading a month's worth of evening labor in exchange. Word spread through Tonopah Junction about what the quiet cowboy was building. Some folks thought it a fool's errand, a waste of good materials. Others found it touching, this stranger's kindness toward the Lawson girl. And a few saw opportunity for gossip, whispering about the young man's possible motivations, wondering if he hoped to win favor or fortune through his charity. Nathan ignored them all. He sanded the wooden armrests until they were smooth as silk. He devised a simple mechanism that would let the wheels lock in place or roll freely. He added a cushion stuffed with horsehair and covered in canvas, then replaced it with leather when that proved more durable. He tested the height, the balance, the weight distribution. He rebuilt sections that did not satisfy him, staying up past midnight by lamplight, determined to get every detail right. It took him 6 weeks. When the chair was finally complete, Nathan loaded it carefully into a wagon and drove it up to the main ranch house. His heart hammered against his ribs as he knocked on the door, suddenly uncertain. What if she hated it? What if it did not work properly? What if this gesture, meant to help, only reminded her more painfully of what she had lost? Martha Lawson answered, her eyes widening when she saw what sat in the wagon bed. "Oh, my Lord," she breathed. "You actually built it?" "Yes, madam. I would like Miss Lawson to try it if she is willing." Martha disappeared inside, and Nathan waited, hat turning in his hands. He heard low voices, a sharp feminine reply he could not make out, then footsteps. Jonathan Lawson appeared in the doorway. "She says she does not want to see it," he said heavily. "Says she does not want false hope or pity." Nathan swallowed hard, fighting disappointment. "Would you tell her it is not false hope? It is real, the chair is real, and it will work. And it is not pity, it is just one person trying to help another the way anyone should." Jonathan sighed. "Come inside, bring the chair. Let her see it at least, even if she refuses to try." Nathan lifted the chair from the wagon, marveling again at how smoothly the wheels turned, and carried it through the door into the Lawson home. The interior was dim after the bright desert sun, and it took his eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, he saw her. Victoria Lawson sat in that heavy wooden chair by the window, thin sunlight illuminating her face. She was thinner than when he had glimpsed her before, her cheekbones sharper, but her eyes were what caught him. They burned with anger and pain and something fierce that had not been extinguished despite everything. "I did not ask for this," she said, her voice low and hard. "I know," Nathan replied. He set the wheeled chair down beside her own. "But I built it anyway." "Why?" "So you can feel good about yourself. So you can be the hero who saved the crippled girl." The words were meant to wound, but Nathan heard the anguish beneath them. "No, I built it because you should not have to sit in one spot for the rest of your life if there is something I can do about it. Because you deserve the chance to move, to go places, to have choices." Victoria laughed bitterly. "Choices? I have no choices anymore." "You have one right now." Nathan gestured to the wheeled chair. "You can try this or you can refuse it. That is your choice to make." They stared at each other for a long moment, the air between them crackling with tension. Then Victoria's gaze dropped to the chair, really looking at it for the first time. Nathan watched her take in the smooth wooden frame, the leather seat, the wheels that gleamed with oil and care. Her expression flickered, walls cracking just slightly. "How does it work?" she asked quietly. Nathan knelt beside the chair, relief flooding through him. "The large wheels are positioned so you can reach them from the seat. You push the rims forward to move forward, pull back to reverse. These smaller wheels in front pivot for turning. The whole thing is balanced so it will not tip easily, and these locks here will hold the wheels in place when you want to stay still. And you think I can actually move it myself? I know you can. You are strong. Your arms are strong. This will take some practice, but yes, I believe you can go anywhere you want to with this chair." Victoria was silent for so long Nathan thought she might still refuse. Then she looked at her father. "Help me into it." Jonathan moved quickly, lifting Victoria carefully from her stationary chair and lowering her into Nathan's creation. She gripped the armrests tightly, her jaw set. Nathan stepped back, giving her space, holding his breath. Victoria's hands found the wheel rims. She pushed tentatively and the chair rolled forward a few inches. Her eyes widened. She pushed again, harder this time, and the chair moved smoothly across the wooden floor. A sound escaped her throat, half laugh and half sob. "It works," she whispered. "It actually works." She pushed again, rolling toward the window, then turned the chair clumsily and came back. Her movements were jerky and uncertain, but the fierce light in her eyes had changed from anger to something else entirely. Hope, fragile and new. Martha Lawson pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Jonathan cleared his throat roughly, and Nathan smiled, a genuine smile that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You will get better at it with practice," he said. "And if anything needs adjusting, any changes to make it more comfortable, you tell me and I will fix it." Victoria looked up at him then, truly seeing him for the first time. "Who are you?" "Nathan Walker, madam. I work for your father." "Why did you do this?" He met her gaze steadily. "I already told you, because it seemed worth doing." She studied his face, searching for dishonesty or ulterior motives, and found none. "Thank you," she said finally, the words clearly difficult. "Thank you, Nathan Walker." Over the following days, Victoria threw herself into mastering the wheeled chair with the same fierce determination she had once brought to breaking horses. Her arms ached, her shoulders burned, but she pushed through the pain, refusing to give up. She rolled through every room of the house, learning how to navigate doorways and corners. She went out onto the porch, feeling wind and sun on her face for the first time in months. She even rolled down the ramp her father hastily built, venturing into the yard, onto the earth itself. Nathan watched from a distance as he worked, catching glimpses of her moving about, and felt satisfaction settle deep in his bones. He had given her something back. It was not everything, not by a long measure, but it was something real. Victoria noticed him watching, though he tried to be subtle about it. She found herself curious about this quiet cowboy who had built her freedom without asking for anything in return. She asked her father about him one evening. "Nathan is a good worker," Jonathan said. "Skilled with horses, never complains, always does more than expected, keeps to himself mostly." "Where did he come from?" "Colorado way, I think. He does not talk much about his past. Lost his family some years back is all I know." That night, as Victoria sat on the porch in her wheeled chair watching the desert sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Nathan walked past on his way to the bunkhouse. She called out to him before she could overthink it. "Nathan, wait." He stopped, turning toward her, and approached the porch. "Yes, Miss Lawson, call me Victoria. After what you have done, I think we can skip the formalities." "Victoria, then." The way he said her name, careful and gentle, made something flutter in her chest. "Sit with me a moment." He hesitated, then climbed the porch steps and leaned against the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. The evening air was cooling, carrying the scent of sage and dust. "I have been thinking," Victoria said, her hands folded in her lap. "I was cruel to you when you first brought the chair. Said terrible things. I am sorry for that. You do not need to apologize. You were hurting. I was. I am." She paused, choosing words carefully. "But the chair has changed things. Not everything. I still cannot walk, cannot ride, cannot do most of what I used to do, but I can move now. I can make choices about where I am and where I go. That is more than I thought I would ever have again. I am glad it helps. It is more than help, Nathan. It is hope. You gave me hope when I had none left, and that is not a small thing." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light fade. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice softer. "My father said you lost your family. I am sorry." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fever took them all within a week. My parents, my 2 sisters. I was 17, and suddenly I was alone. I have been drifting ever since, I suppose, working ranches, moving when the restlessness gets too strong. Do you ever think about settling somewhere? Sometimes. But nowhere has felt like home in a long time." Victoria absorbed this, understanding it better than she would have before the accident. "I used to think I knew exactly what my life would be. Now I have no idea. Everything I planned is impossible. Maybe different plans are possible, though. Not the same, but still good." She looked at him sharply, but saw no platitude in his expression, just honest consideration. "Maybe," she conceded. "I am not there yet, but maybe." That conversation became the first of many. Nathan started taking his evening meal on the porch when Victoria was there, the 2 of them talking as stars emerged overhead. She learned about his childhood in Colorado, his father's small ranch, his mother's love of singing. He learned about her dreams of expanding the Lawson operation, her skill with horses, the freedom she had felt riding across open desert. "I miss it," she admitted one night. "The riding, the speed, feeling like I could go anywhere." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said, "What if you could still ride?" "What do you mean?" "A wagon. A special one, designed so you could drive it yourself. The reins would be no different than they ever were. Your arms are strong enough. You could go places again, see the desert, have that freedom back." Victoria's heart leaped, then crashed. "That is impossible. How would I get into a wagon? How would I get the chair in and out? We would figure it out. Build a ramp maybe, secure the chair properly. It would take some planning, but I do not think it is impossible." She stared at him, this man who seemed to see solutions where everyone else saw only obstacles. "You really believe that?" "I do." "Then let us try." The wagon project consumed Nathan's free time for the next month. He modified an old buckboard, lowering one side and creating a ramp that could be raised or locked down. He installed rails that Victoria's wheeled chair could lock into, keeping it secure during travel. He tested every inch of it obsessively, making certain it was safe and functional. Victoria helped plan every detail, her mind engaged in a way it had not been since the accident. She felt useful again, her opinions valued, her intelligence respected. And she found herself watching Nathan as he worked, noticing the careful way his hands moved, the concentration on his face, the quiet satisfaction when a piece fit perfectly. She was falling for him. The realization came one evening as she watched him adjust the wagon's ramp for the fourth time, determined to get the angle exactly right. He had given her back pieces of herself she thought were lost forever. But more than that, he saw her as whole. Not broken or pitiable or tragic, just Victoria. A person with challenges, yes, but also with strength and capability and worth. The first time they took the wagon out together, Victoria's hands trembled as she took the reins. Nathan had transferred her into the wagon seat, securing her chair behind them, and now sat beside her as she prepared to drive for the first time since the accident. "You remember how," he said quietly. "Just feel it." Victoria clicked her tongue, snapped the reins gently, and the horse moved forward. The wagon rolled smoothly across the desert floor, wheels crunching on sand and stone. Wind touched her face. The horizon stretched endless before her. And tears streamed down her cheeks as joy, pure and overwhelming, flooded through her. "I am moving," she whispered. "I am actually moving." Nathan grinned beside her, his own eyes bright. "You are. Where do you want to go?" "Everywhere." They drove for hours that day, following old trails into the desert, stopping to rest by a creek bed where cottonwoods offered shade. Nathan lifted Victoria from the wagon seat into her wheeled chair, and she rolled right down to the water's edge, trailing her fingers in the cool current. "Thank you," she said when Nathan joined her, "for all of it. The chair, the wagon, the believing. You did the hard part, Victoria. You did not give up. I wanted to. Before you came, I wanted to give up every single day. But you did not." She looked at him, this man who had become so important to her, and felt her heart pound. "Nathan, can I ask you something? Why have you stayed? You could have built the chair and moved on to another ranch, another town, but you are still here." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the water. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and honest. "At first I stayed because I wanted to make sure the chair worked, that you did not need anything else. But then I stayed because I wanted to. Because being here, being near you, feels right in a way nothing has for a long time." Victoria's breath caught. "Nathan." He turned to her, and she saw everything written in his eyes. The care, the respect, the growing love. "I know this is not the time or place, and I have no right to say it, but Victoria, you have become the most important person in my world. Your strength, your spirit, the way you face each day despite everything. I admire you more than anyone I have ever known, and somewhere along the way, admiration became something deeper." "Nathan," she said again, but this time she reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I thought I was imagining it. Thought maybe I was just grateful and confusing that with something else. But it is not confusion. I have feelings for you too, real ones." He looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face, and smiled with such warmth it took her breath away. "Yeah? Yeah." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Victoria met him halfway. Their lips touched softly, tentatively, and then with growing certainty. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, eyes wide with wonder. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Nathan admitted. "Then why did you wait?" "Because I needed you to want it too. Needed this to be real, not gratitude or obligation." "It is real," Victoria said firmly. This is the most real thing I have felt since the accident." They courted properly after that, though the whole ranch knew something had shifted between the boss's daughter and the quiet cowboy. Nathan took Victoria on wagon rides every Sunday, exploring the desert landscape she had thought lost to her. They talked for hours, sharing dreams and fears and histories. He taught her card games in the evening, their hands brushing as he dealt. She watched him work with horses and recognized the same patient kindness he had shown her. Jonathan Lawson observed the developing relationship with complicated feelings. On one hand, Nathan was just a ranch hand, no property or prospects beyond his skills. On the other, he had given Victoria her life back, made her smile again, treated her with a respect and care that was undeniable. When Nathan approached him 6 months after building the wheeled chair, asking permission to marry Victoria, Jonathan found himself saying yes without hesitation. "You treat her right," Jonathan said gruffly. "You give her the life she deserves, and you have my blessing." Nathan proposed to Victoria on a hillside overlooking Tanapa Junction, the evening sky brilliant with color. He had no ring, just a promise, and his whole heart offered openly. "I know this is not what you imagined for yourself," he said, holding both her hands in his. "But Victoria, I love you completely. Not despite your injury, not because of it, just because of who you are. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes together. Will you marry me?" Victoria's answer came through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in October 1885. A simple ceremony in the Tanapa Junction Church, with most of the town in attendance. Victoria wore a dress of ivory silk, and Nathan stood beside her in a new suit, both of them glowing with joy. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan lifted Victoria from her wheeled chair into his arms and kissed her soundly, to much applause and laughter. The Lawsons gave them a small house on the ranch property, close enough for family but far enough for privacy. Nathan built more ramps, widened doorways, modified everything to ensure Victoria could move freely through their home. He continued working for her father, but now talked about future plans, maybe starting a business building wheeled chairs for others who needed them, using what he had learned to help more people. Victoria supported this dream fully, even helping him refine designs and write letters to doctors in other towns. She had found new purpose in this work, and in managing the ranch's books, which she could do perfectly well from her wheeled chair. Her mind was as sharp as ever, and her family came to rely on her judgment for important decisions. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. There were days when Victoria's injury frustrated her beyond words, when she grieved what she had lost and felt inadequate. There were practical difficulties neither had anticipated. But Nathan never wavered in his love and support, and Victoria found strength in his steadiness. Intimacy had been a worry for Victoria before their wedding night, fear that her body's limitations would make her inadequate as a wife. But Nathan was patient and creative, and they discovered together what brought joy and pleasure, learning each other thoroughly. Those private moments became sacred, a place where Victoria felt completely whole and utterly loved. In the summer of 1887, Victoria realized her monthly courses had stopped. At first she thought it merely stress or some complication from her injury, but when the pattern continued and her body began to change, hope bloomed cautiously. Doc Pemberton confirmed what she barely dared believe. "You are with child, Victoria," the old doctor said, shaking his head in wonder. "I would not have thought it possible given your injuries, but nature has a way of surprising us." Victoria could not wait to tell Nathan. When he came home that evening, dusty from a day working cattle, she was practically vibrating with excitement. "Nathan, sit down, I have news." He sat immediately, concern crossing his face at her serious tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right." She took his hands, squeezing tightly. "Nathan, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her, not comprehending. Then understanding hit and his face transformed with joy so pure it made Victoria's heart ache. A baby, truly, truly. He dropped to his knees beside her chair, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing his face to her stomach. "A baby," he repeated, voice muffled. When he looked up, tears tracked through the dust on his cheeks. "Victoria, this is the most incredible news. I was afraid it might not be possible. My injury, the damage to my spine, but Doc Pemberton says everything looks good so far. We are going to be parents." Nathan laughed, the sound incredulous and delighted. "We need to add onto the house, build a nursery. And we will need to modify your chair for when the baby is born, some way for you to carry the child safely. We should start planning immediately." Victoria laughed at his instant list-making, so characteristic of the man who solved problems by building solutions. "We have time. But yes, we need to prepare." The pregnancy progressed well despite everyone's concerns. Victoria's body adapted, and she learned to balance differently in her chair as her belly grew. Nathan did indeed add a nursery to their small house, painting the walls a cheerful yellow and building a cradle with his own hands. Victoria's mother made blankets and tiny clothes, her excitement barely contained. In March 1888, after a long and difficult labor that left everyone exhausted, Victoria gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James, after Nathan's father, and when Nathan held his son for the first time, cradling the tiny bundle with infinite gentleness, Victoria fell in love with him all over again. "Hello, James," Nathan whispered. "Welcome to the world, little man. You have the strongest, bravest mother anyone could ask for." Victoria watched through tired tears, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This life, so different from anything she had imagined, was more beautiful than she could have dreamed. Motherhood from a wheeled chair required innovation and adaptation. Nathan designed a cushioned basket that could attach securely to Victoria's chair, letting her carry James safely as she moved about. He built a changing table at the perfect height for her to reach comfortably. Victoria learned to do everything one-handed when necessary, becoming adept at holding James while rolling her chair, at nursing him while maintaining balance, at bathing him in a basin positioned just right. She was a natural mother, patient and loving, singing the same songs to James that her own mother had sung to her. And Nathan was a devoted father, taking James on long walks, telling him stories about the desert and horses and the incredible woman who was his mother. The wheeled chair business Nathan had dreamed of became reality. Word spread about his skill, and letters arrived from across Nevada and neighboring territories, people desperate for the mobility devices he could create. Nathan hired 2 assistants and converted an old barn into a workshop. Victoria managed the business side, corresponding with clients, keeping accounts, ensuring quality. Together they built something meaningful, helping dozens of people reclaim independence. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who thought nothing strange about his mother's wheeled chair. It was simply part of life, like his father's calloused hands or his grandfather's weathered face. He would climb into Victoria's lap and she would race him around the house, both of them laughing, her arms strong enough now to build up real speed. When James was 3, Victoria found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. In January 1892, they welcomed a daughter they named Grace. She had Victoria's dark hair and Nathan's steady brown eyes, and she was utterly adored from her first breath. The house was full now, loud with children's laughter and busy with the chaos of family life. Nathan had expanded it twice more, adding bedrooms and a larger kitchen, always ensuring every space was accessible for Victoria. She moved through it all with practiced ease, her wheeled chair an extension of herself, no longer a reminder of loss but simply a tool that enabled her life. One evening, when James was 6 and Grace 3, Victoria sat on the porch watching her children play in the yard. Nathan joined her, settling into the chair beside her with a contented sigh. "They are getting so big," Victoria said softly. "Sometimes I can hardly believe they are ours." "Best thing we ever made," Nathan agreed. "Second best," Victoria corrected, smiling at him. "The first was this life together. Everything else grew from that." Nathan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "Do you ever regret it? The way things turned out?" Victoria considered the question seriously. "I regret the accident, the pain, losing the use of my legs. That will always be hard. But do I regret where it led me? This life, this family, you? Never, not for 1 second. I love you, Victoria Walker." "I love you too, Nathan Walker." They sat together as the desert sunset painted the sky, their children's laughter drifting on the evening breeze. Inside the house, the wheeled chair that had started everything sat empty, waiting for morning when Victoria would rise and roll into another day of the beautiful, hard-won life they had built together. The years continued to unfold with all their joys and challenges. James developed his father's skill with wood and his mother's head for business, often spending afternoons in the workshop learning to build wheeled chairs. Grace proved to be fiercely independent and curious, constantly asking questions about everything, fascinated equally by machinery and stories. Nathan's business expanded beyond just wheeled chairs. He began designing other mobility aids, crutches and braces, and specialized equipment for people with different needs. His reputation spread across the West, and the workshop employed 8 skilled craftsmen. People would travel hundreds of miles to consult with Nathan Walker, the cowboy who understood what disabled folks needed because he loved someone who faced those challenges every day. Victoria became an advocate in her own right, writing articles for newspapers about the capabilities of people with injuries and disabilities, challenging the assumption that such individuals should be hidden away or pitied. She corresponded with doctors and fellow wheelchair users, building a network of support and shared knowledge. The wheeled chair that had given her freedom became a symbol of possibility for countless others. In 1895, when a new school was built in Tonopah Junction, Victoria fought to ensure it was accessible, with ramps and wide doors. The school board initially balked at the expense, but Victoria presented such a compelling case, backed by her father's influence and the respect her family had earned, that they relented. The school became one of the first in Nevada, designed with accessibility in mind, and children with various disabilities were able to attend alongside their peers. Jonathan Lawson passed away peacefully in 1897, and with his death came significant change. He left the ranch to his children jointly, with the stipulation that Victoria and Nathan would manage it. Some in town questioned whether a woman in a wheeled chair could run a cattle operation, but Victoria proved them wrong quickly. She knew every aspect of ranching, made smart decisions about breeding and grazing and sales, and commanded respect from every ranch hand. Nathan handled the physical oversight, but everyone knew Victoria was the strategic mind behind the operation's continued success. Samuel, who had struggled with guilt since Victoria's accident, found redemption in supporting his sister's leadership. He took on the role of foreman, implementing Victoria's decisions with loyalty and dedication. The siblings rebuilt their relationship slowly, learning to talk about that terrible day and the aftermath, finding forgiveness and renewed closeness. James turned 18 in 1906, a young man now, tall and capable. He announced his intention to study engineering at a university back east, wanting to bring modern design principles to the mobility equipment business. Victoria and Nathan supported his dreams fully, proud beyond words of their son's ambitions. Grace, at 15, had become a skilled horsewoman and showed no interest in leaving Nevada. She wanted to expand the ranch, modernize its operations, and eventually take over its management. She and Victoria would spend hours discussing strategy, the younger woman learning everything her mother could teach. On a warm June evening in 1906, Victoria and Nathan sat on the porch as they had countless times before. They were both 42 now, their faces weathered by desert sun and time, but their love had only deepened with the years. "You remember the day you brought me that chair?" Victoria asked, her voice soft with memory. Nathan smiled. "Every detail. You were so angry, so fierce, and so beautiful it made my chest hurt. I thought you were offering false hope, pity dressed up as kindness. And now I know you were offering exactly what you said, real hope, real possibility. You gave me back my life, Nathan." He shook his head gently. "No, I gave you a tool. You gave yourself your life back through sheer determination and refusal to give up. I just provided the means." "We gave each other everything," Victoria said. "That is the truth of it." Their children emerged from the house then, Grace carrying a tray with glasses of cool water, James holding a letter that had arrived that afternoon. "Mother, Father, this came from the university," James said, excitement in his voice. "They have accepted my proposal for a research project on adaptive equipment design. They are offering funding and everything." "That is wonderful, son," Nathan said, standing to embrace the young man. Victoria beamed with pride. "Tell us everything." As James explained his project, his sister interrupting with questions and suggestions, his parents listening with rapt attention, the desert evening settled around them. Stars began to appear overhead, the same stars that had witnessed Victoria's accident 22 years earlier, the same stars that had shone on the night Nathan finished building her wheeled chair. So much had changed since that terrible day when the doctor said she would never walk again. So much had been lost, grieved, and eventually integrated into a life that was different but no less valuable. And so much had been gained: love, family, purpose, and the deep satisfaction of lives lived with meaning and intention. Nathan had built Victoria a chair with wheels and hope, but together they had built something far greater. They had built a marriage based on equality and respect. They had built a family filled with love and possibility. They had built a business that helped hundreds of people reclaim their independence. They had built a legacy that would outlast them both, changing attitudes and breaking down barriers. Grace headed inside eventually to help her grandmother with supper preparations, and James drifted toward the barn to check on a mare that would foal soon. Victoria and Nathan were left alone again, sitting in comfortable silence as they had so many thousands of times. "I am tired," Victoria admitted. It had been a long day, filled with meetings about ranch business and correspondence about the wheeled chair venture. "Want me to carry you to bed?" Nathan offered, as he did most nights. "Not just yet. I want to sit here a little longer with you under the stars." Nathan moved his chair closer, and Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. His arm came around her, holding her close, and they breathed in rhythm together. "Nathan, thank you for everything, for seeing me when I could not see myself." for believing in me when I had no belief left, for loving me so completely." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart, for building this beautiful life with me, for being the most extraordinary woman I have ever known." They sat together until the stars filled the sky completely, the desert night settling around their home like a blessing. Inside, laughter drifted from the kitchen where 3 generations of family prepared the evening meal. In the barn, horses moved in their stalls, and in the workshop beyond, tomorrow's work waited patiently. This was their life, hard-won and deeply cherished. Not perfect, never without challenges, but whole and real and theirs. From tragedy had grown triumph, from loss had grown love, and from one cowboy's determination to help had grown a legacy that would echo through generations. The wheeled chair sat just inside the door, ready for morning. It had rolled countless miles over the years, carrying Victoria through every corner of the ranch, through Tonopah Junction streets, through all the moments of her remarkable life. It was scarred and worn now, the wood smoothed by constant use, the wheels replaced multiple times. Nathan had offered to build her a new one, incorporating all the improvements he had learned over the years, but Victoria always refused. "This chair is part of our story," she would say. "It was the beginning of everything. I will use it until I absolutely cannot anymore." And she did. Victoria and Nathan grew old together in the house on the Lawson Ranch, surrounded by family and the work they loved. James returned from university with his engineering degree and revolutionary designs for mobility equipment, joining his father's business and taking it to new heights. Grace took over ranch operations when Victoria finally stepped back at 55, running it with the same sharp intelligence and fierce determination her mother had shown. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with noise and joy. They would climb onto Victoria's lap for stories, play with the wheels of her chair, and grow up understanding that different bodies were just part of life's natural variety. Victoria delighted in them all, these children who would never know a world where she could walk, who simply loved her as she was. Nathan never stopped inventing. Even in his 60s, he would spend hours in the workshop, always thinking about how to make things better, more comfortable, more accessible. His hands grew gnarled with arthritis, but they never lost their skill or their gentle touch. Victoria remained sharp and engaged until her final days. She corresponded with disability advocates across the country, advised the territorial government on accessibility policies, and wrote her memoir about life as a disabled woman in the American West. The book was published in 1920 and became required reading in medical schools, challenging doctors to see their patients as whole people rather than just diagnoses. On a spring morning in 1925, Victoria woke in the bed she had shared with Nathan for 40 years, sunlight streaming through the window, and felt a deep contentment settle over her. She was 61 years old, and her body was tired. The years in the wheeled chair had taken their toll, her spine causing constant pain now, her strength finally waning. But what a life it had been! Nathan stirred beside her, still handsome even with silver hair and lined face. His eyes opened, found hers, and he smiled the same smile that had melted her heart decades earlier. "Good morning, my love," he murmured. "Good morning." They lay together quietly, hands clasped between them, breathing in sync. No words were necessary. Everything important had been said, lived, and proven over 40 years of marriage. Victoria lived another 3 years after that morning. Years filled with great-grandchildren and continued advocacy work, and quiet evenings on the porch with her husband. When she finally passed peacefully in her sleep in 1928, Nathan was holding her hand, just as he had held it through every important moment of their life together. The funeral was attended by hundreds. Ranchers and townsfolk, yes, but also dozens of people who rolled up in wheeled chairs Nathan had built, whose lives had been changed by the Walker family's work and advocacy. They came from across Nevada and beyond, united in grief for a woman who had refused to let injury define or limit her, who had lived with courage and grace and determination. Nathan stood at the graveside, leaning heavily on his grandson's arm, and looked at the inscription on Victoria's headstone. Victoria Lawson Walker, 1864–1928, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, advocate, pioneer. She refused to give up and change the world. "That is not quite right," Nathan said softly. "She did not refuse to give up. She chose to keep living, keep fighting, keep loving. That is different. That is harder. That is braver." He lived 2 more years after Victoria's death, long enough to see his great-granddaughter take her first steps, long enough to train his successor in the workshop, long enough to ensure the business and the advocacy work would continue. When he died quietly in 1930 at the age of 66, his family laid him to rest beside Victoria, together forever as they had been in life. The Walker legacy continued through generations. James's innovations in mobility equipment led to partnerships with medical device companies, spreading improved wheelchairs and accessibility solutions worldwide. Grace's descendants ran the ranch into the 21st century, always maintaining the accessibility features Victoria had insisted upon, always hiring workers regardless of physical ability. The workshop in Tonopah Junction became a museum eventually, preserved as a historic site dedicated to the cowboy who had seen a need and filled it, and the woman who had refused to let society's limitations become her own. School children would visit, learning about Nathan and Victoria Walker, about innovation and determination and love that overcame all obstacles. The original wheeled chair Nathan built in 1884 sat in a place of honor in that museum, behind glass but still visible, still powerful. Visitors would stop and stare at it, marveling at the craftsmanship, imagining the hands that built it and the woman who had rolled through life in it, refusing to be diminished, insisting on living fully. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the desert wind blew just right, museum staff would swear they could hear laughter drifting through the old workshop, the sound of a man and woman whose love story had started with wheels and hope and had grown into something that changed the world. That chair, those wheels, that hope, they were the beginning. But the love, the partnership, the life Victoria and Nathan built together, the legacy they left behind, the countless lives they touched and changed, that was everything. That was what endured. In the end, the doctor had been right about one thing. Victoria never did walk again. But she soared anyway, rolling through life with courage and grace, carried not by legs but by love, determination, and the unwavering support of the quiet cowboy who had seen her not as broken but as extraordinary, who had built her a chair with wheels and hope, and had stayed by her side every single day thereafter. Their story became legend in Tonopah Junction and beyond, told and retold, inspiring generations. It was a reminder that tragedy does not have to mean defeat, that love can flourish under any circumstances, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places, like a cowboy with calloused hands and a kind heart, who saw someone hurting and decided to build her a way forward, one carefully crafted wheel at a time.